Continuing with 5-5. This problem we see does not have either of these expressions repeated on the other side. So the only way to do this problem is to start by FOILing. 3x squared minus 9x plus 2x minus 6 equals 7x minus 1. I am going to combine like terms. I now see I have a quadratic equation with the power of 2, so I am going to set it equal to 0. (3x squared minus 14x minus 5 equals 0). I am going to factor. Check that to see if it FOILs back out. Each of these factors will now be set to 0 and solved. X is negative 1/3 and x is 5. For problem 6, we have to use a technique we've not needed yet in this section. There are 4 terms, so we must factor by grouping. I'm going to take out t squared and get 6t plus 5. I'm going to take out negative 1 and get 6t plus 5 equals 0. Make sure that you write equals 0. Now I see 6t plus 5 is my common factor, so I'll keep factoring. And I have to always look for these. T squared minus 1 is a difference of squares because it's opposite signs and both perfect squares. So if factors again. I also know I should have 3 factors to set equal to 0 because my power was 3, and that tells me I should have 3 answers. So I set each one to 0, and I solve. T equals negative 5, 6. T equals negative 1. T equals 1, and I am done. Now if I'm going to problem 7, I could see that it's a trinomial. But I also see that it has this 2k plus 3 expression throughout it. We've practiced factoring these by use substitution, so we'll do it the same. We'll let u be 2k plus 3. So I have 4u squared minus u minus 3 is 0. I am going to factor. I'm going to say 4u and u, 3, 1. I'm going to say plus and minus. FOIL that out and check that we get everything back as we need. Now I don't want to continue solving because I would be solving for u, and this was originally written with k. So I must pause and put 2k plus 3 back into my parentheses. I'm going to simplify these expressions by distributing. I get 8k, so that's 12 plus 3 is 15. And I get 2k plus 2 is 0. Set each one equal to 0. And solve. The first will make k equal to negative 15/8, and this will be k is equal to negative 1. Problem 8. problem 8 could be done by foiling or by seeing you have difference of squares. I am going to say that probably for most of us it's easier to just FOIL. So I'm going to say 9p squared equals 5p plus 2 written twice, and I'm going to FOIL. 9p squared equals 25p squared plus 20p plus 4. Where did I get 20? 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 and 10 make 20. Now I have a quadratic equation that needs to be set to 0. So I'm going to subtract my 9p squared. I'm going to write the expression first instead of 0. So I'm going to write 16p squared plus 20p plus 4 equals 0. Now, I have a GCF of 4 that I can take out of here. And I get 4p squared plus 5p plus 1 equals 0. Now I'm going to factor. So I have 4p plus 1, p plus 1. Now this hasn't happened yet, so we need to discuss something here. We say set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Well, the 4 is a factor, but there's no variable with it. It doesn't make sense to say 4 equals 0. That's not a contributor to an answer. Just the factors with the variable. So we're going to say 4p plus 1 is 0, and p plus 1 is 0. So we get p is negative 1/4, and we get p is negative 1. The U-try problem you would do like 7, so give it a go on your own. All right, to finish 5-5, we have a few word problems. A right triangularly shaped sail on a sailboat has a height 4 feet more than its base. I would draw a picture. I would draw a right triangle. It says that the height is 4 feet more than its base. So I would say the base is x and the height is x plus 4. It says the area is 30 square feet, so we have to remember how to calculate the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So I can build an equation. I can say 1/2 x times x plus 4 equals 30. Now, probably for a lot of us, we would rather not work with that 1/2. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 to clear it out. So 2 and 1/2 cancel. I'm going to distribute my x. So I get x squared plus 4x equals 60. Now by distributing my x, this equation has become quadratic, meaning power of 2. To solve it, I must set it equal to 0. And now I need to factor. So I'm going to say x times x, and I'm going to use positive 10 minus 6 because that multiplies to negative 60 and gets me positive 4. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. This says x is negative 10. This says x is 6. Well, it says find the dimensions of the sail. X is the base of the sail and cannot be represented by a negative number. So the base of the sail is 6 feet. And the height is 4 more than that, so 10 feet. I could check my work by using the formula, 1/2 base times height, so 6 times 10 is 60, divided by 2 is the 30 square feet I should get. Problem 2 says we have a rectangle, so let's draw a rectangle. It says its length is 3 feet longer than twice its width. So if my width is x, my length is 2x plus 3. The area of this rectangle is 35 square feet. To find area of a rectangle, we use length times width. So I'm going to do x times 2x plus 3 equals 35. I'm going to distribute. 2x squared plus 3x equals 35. My power of 2 tells me to set this equal to 0. So I get 2x squared plus 3x minus 35 equals 0. I'm going to factor 2x and x, and I need a choice for 35. I'm going to use 7 and 5. Now this means my signs are different, and I need to get my outside inside to 3. So the outside right now would be 10, and this would be negative 7, which would give me positive 3. I'm going to set each one equal to 0 to solve. This says x is 7 halves, and this says x is negative 5. Well, it says find the dimensions of the rectangle. X is the width and could not be negative. So I'm going to say that my width is 7 halves, or 3.5 feet. My length is 2 times 3.5 plus 3, which is 10 feet. So my width is 3.5 feet, and my length is 10 feet. To finish out this page and these word problems, we have a rock is dropped from a building 576 feet high. Its distance from the ground is measured by this function. So this function measures how high the object is still above the ground. So it says how long after the rock is dropped will it hit the ground? Well, if it's hit the ground, that means that f of t is equal to 0. F of t is the height left to fall. Well, if it's hit the ground, it has no more height to fall. So we're going to take our negative 16t squared plus 576 and just set it to 0. I'm going to look for my GCF. It is negative 16, so I'm going to factor that out. I'm going to change my sign because I took out a negative. I'm going to get a 36. I have a difference of squares, so I'm going to factor. The parentheses will be the same except one's plus and one's minus. Negative 16 is not something I set to 0 because it has no variable with it. So I say t plus 6 is 0 and t minus 6 is 0. This says t is negative 6 and this says t is 6. T is seconds. I cannot run a clock and end up with a number of seconds negative. So this is not a reasonable answer. How long does it take the rock to hit the ground? 6 seconds.